From homeless to billionaire, this incredible story of Paul Mitchell's story. Welcome to another episode of Coffee, Secrets, and Transformation. I'm your host, Don Ray. Imagine being told you'll never amount to anything. So kind of like imagine sleeping in your car, wondering where to be your next meal will come from. That's not good. So now imagine building a company worth billions of dollars and creating one of the most recognized names in hair care. This isn't Hollywood. No, it's not a movie. This is the true story of John Paul DeJoria, the entrepreneur behind Paul Mitchell's empire. A story of poverty, rejection, and homelessness, and one of the greatest comeback stories in American business. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's explore how a young boy selling cards door to door became one of the most successful businessmen in the world. So John Paul was born in Los Angeles in 1944. His parents divorced when he was young. The money was always in short supply, life wasn't easy, and every dollar mattered. So by the age of 9, John Paul and his brothers were already working. They sold Christmas cards and newspapers door to door to help ends meet. While most children spend their afternoons playing games and watching television, John Paul was learning lessons about responsibility and perseverance and survival. The family's financial struggles became so severe that he and his brother eventually spent time in foster care. For many children, experiencing trauma like this can leave an emotional scar that lasts a lifetime. Yet somehow, even in those difficult years, John Paul developed a belief that situations do not have to determine a person's future. So that belief would eventually change his life. As he grew older, John Paul joined the United States Navy. So military taught him discipline and structure. But when he returned to civilian life, success still seemed far away. He worked a variety of jobs. He sold encyclopedias, that's old school. He sold insurance, and he worked maintenance jobs. Then came a moment that many people would never forget. A teacher reportedly told him that he would never become a successful business. Think about that. Someone looked at this young man and essentially predicted a failure. Many people would have accepted that judgment and lowered their expectations, but instead, John Paul stored those words away and used them as motivation, because every rejection became fuel. Every setback became another reason to prove people wrong. Then life became even more difficult. At one point, John Paul lost nearly everything. He became homeless. For a period of time, he lived in his car. He had little money, few resources, and no guarantee that things would improve. So imagine lying awake at night in your vehicle and wondering what tomorrow might bring. Most people would have focused only on surviving another day, but John never stopped looking for an opportunity. Years later, he would often speak about how those experiences shaped him. Being broke taught him resilience, it taught him gratitude. Most importantly, it taught him that failure is not permanent unless you decide to quit. Those lessons would actually be soon tested. In the late 1970s, John Paul met a highly respected hairstylist named Paul Mitchell. Paul Mitchell was known through the beauty industry for his talent, creativity, and innovative ideas. The two men quickly discovered they shared something important: a belief that professional salons desire better products. So together they decided to start a company. That was just one problem: they had almost no money. So the business launched with approximately $700. That's right. So most people would have looked at those odds and walked away, but they saw a possibility where others saw limitations. Building an empire one door at a time. So the early days were anything but glamorous because money was scarce. They couldn't afford advertising because they were expensive, or running a campaign. They couldn't afford luxury offices. They couldn't afford fancy packaging. In fact, one reason that the original Paul Mitchell bottles were black and white is because they didn't have money to print them in color. It was costly. So every penny would matter. John Paul personally traveled from salon to salon carrying the products and introduced them to brands. Many salons owners rejected him. Some weren't even interested. Others doubted the company would actually survive, but they kept going. Every no simply said that they would be closer to a yes. One salon became 5, and 5 became 20, and 20 became hundreds. Slowly, the company began building momentum. Stylists loved the product. Customers noticed the difference. Word of mouth spread through the beauty industry, and the small startup began to transform into something much larger. Just as the company was experiencing tremendous success, tragedy struck. In 1989, Paul Mitchell passed away. He was battling cancer. He was only 53 years old. The loss was devastating to John Paul because John Paul not only lost a business partner, but also a close friend. So many companies collapse after the key founder is gone. But John Paul made a decision. He would continue building the company and honor Paul's vision. But rather than allowing tragedy to destroy the dream, he used it as a kind of a motivation to continue moving forward. So the company would carry Paul Mitchell's name and the legacy into the future. So over the years, the company expanded across the United States and eventually around the world. The business that started with only $700 into one of the most recognized professional hair care brands on the planet. Millions of customers purchased the product. Thousands of salons carried the brand. Annual sales eventually climbed into the billions. And John Paul, the young boy who once sold car door to door and slept in his car, became a billionaire. It's one of the most remarkable transformations in modern business history. What makes this story so inspiring isn't the money, it's the perseverance. So John Paul journeys proves that success is not determined by whether or where you begin. It's determined by whether you keep moving forward when life becomes difficult. When he was poor, he kept going. When he was rejected, he kept going. When he became homeless, he kept going. When tragedy struck, he kept going. The real secret isn't shampoo. The real secret was perseverance. Because success rarely happens overnight. It happens when ordinary people refuse to give up on extraordinary dreams. So the next time you feel discouraged, the next time something tells you that your dream is impossible, remember the young boy walking door to door selling cards. Remember the man slept in his car. Remember the entrepreneur who started a company with only $700. Because the Paul Mitchell story isn't really about hair products. It's about resilience. It's about refusing to let your situation define your future. And it's proof that sometimes the people who start with the least end up achieving the most. If a homeless man with $700 could build a billion-dollar empire, imagine what might be possible when determination meets opportunity. And that, perhaps, is the greatest lessons of all. I'm your host, Don Ray.
Don Ray!